Welcome, everyone. I hope you're ready to dive deep into the conversations that matter most in customer experience. I'm Michelle Stevens, course director at CXM Academy. And today I'm sitting down with Dimitri Jambé to discuss something that affects every CX professional, but rarely gets attention it deserves: how to design workshops and trainings that actually create a change. So, Dimitri, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michelle. Hi. Thanks for having me.
You're quite welcome. Now, Dimitri, I know you as a learning and customer contact expert who spent years trying to understand what separates workshops that transform from workshops that simply inform. One of the things that struck me in our conversation is that we don't have a content problem, but we have a design problem. Because once you understand how to design for the learner's journey rather than the content structure, everything changes, right? And I have to share something personal here. One of the things that I've truly learned from you was that to focus on the journey of the student instead of the content that needs to be absorbed by them. Now, I really wonder, how did you come to that realization and what are the implications of that?
That is a very interesting question. I think it's not too far fetched to make a link between training and customer experience, of course. In customer experience, we believe that organizing a business should be focused on the customer, or at least we should be aware of how a customer perceives things when being in touch with the company and with our products and services. I look at training from the same point of view. Since I'm training organizations in creating great conversations with their customers, I believe that training should be focused towards the trainee. And if we understand how he perceives and experiences learning and development interventions, then we can adapt what we do in order to make sure that the objectives of our training are are realized.
Yeah. Most of us sat through hundreds of workshops or training sessions. Well, if you are my age, then hundreds is realistic. Some stick, most don't. But what makes a workshop or a training actually work versus just being another training session people sit through?
There's a couple of things. What I learned and why I've learned what I learned, I think. I started off training colleagues within the customer service organization I was working at about 20 years ago. When training professionals, junior professionals at that time, in a professional context, they weren't the ones asking to be trained most of the times. So the most important question they will ask themselves is, what's in it for me? And I think that's where a lot of trainings already lack. You know, make sure that you understand what's in it for them and you help them understand what's in it for them. Well, preferably prior to training them. Only if I know I will be better off paying attention and investing in the training as a participant, I will be able to learn something out of it.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing within the specific scope of employee training that is going to be very important. Make sure that you focus towards the what's in it for me for your participants. Second, I think it's very, very important, and it's of course related to the thing I just explained. Make sure that you adapt your content to the reality as it is perceived by your trainee. We tend to stay very abstract and general when we train things. You know, general theories and models and research insights, and they are all enormously interesting for us freaks, but it often asks a lot of the participant to link this to his or her reality.
Yeah.
And a good L&D intervention adapts towards the reality as it is perceived by the participant. And when you do that, you make it easier for people to understand how it affects them, how they can improve their reality by using whatever it is you want to train them in. So that's the second thing. And then the third element, I think, is about genuine connection and recognition for the employee. And it's something it's the most personal element, I think, out of the three I'm explaining here. I truly respect and love the people I work with. I see the importance, the beauty within what they are doing and the way they're doing it. And I try to make genuine connections with all of them. It's why I prefer working with smaller groups. It creates a more personal learning experience. And once you enable that basic trust that comes out of this connection, you are able to make things happen that are simply impossible when
Mm.
you do not invest in this. So that's the third element. And I think these three things combined separate great training interventions, at least the ones I like to create,
Yeah.
from a lot of corporate training programs that, don't get the impact at all most of the
Yeah.
time. Um,
Yeah. So the 3 points are what's in it for me. It's my favorite radio station. I've learned from you. Uh, so WIIFM.
yeah,
I will
yeah,
never
that
forget that
one.
first time you said that. I was like, yeah, this. I love this. I love this radio
I
station.
also
It's all
just
about
learned
me.
that from another colleague of mine. I don't remember who and where or when, but it's a great concept. Yeah, I
It
agree.
is a fantastic concept. So that's the first one. So what's in it for me? And then the second one is like that's if I can summarize it, it's the mindset shift from compliance to actual learning, right? So is it a checklist or
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Also, but it's also about, I talk a lot about customer needs. Of course, I do.
Mm,
And you can talk about a customer's need to a customer service employee, or you can talk about a very concrete, tangible conversation he's having every day. When this would be a bank, for example, I could be talking about a customer calling to tell us his Visa card isn't working
mhm.
anymore. So when you make it tangible, when you make it recognizable for a person, um, it becomes a lot easier for them to look at it, think about it, reflect on it, and try to implement whatever it is you want to teach them or inspire them in. For example, when I talk about practical needs and emotional needs, it's very abstract. No one truly understands what I mean unless I use an example. And the more recognizable the example is, the easier it becomes for them to invest in
Yeah,
the training.
I've seen it as well when we were training a group as well, that very often you are able and you consciously make that bridge between, okay, so this is the abstract. So what does that mean for you? And how does that actually happen in your daily life? So you actively bridge that on a continuous basis, actually, to make it tangible for them, to make it, yeah, make it come alive, basically.
That's a great observation. Thank you for that, because it does explain a lot. It's very often, there's this bridge between training and coaching.
Mhm.
And asking the right questions most of the time when you want people to transform, and when your aim is not only to teach but really to transform, it's much more about asking the right questions. And I know I'm speaking in cliches here, but it's much more about asking the right questions than about telling them the right things. So as a facilitator, it's very important to try and, well, help people ask themselves these questions. What does it mean for you? How can this help you? How could we put this to practice within this specific situation? Those are the questions that help people order their thoughts, question their beliefs, question their convictions. And that in itself is what enables
Yeah.
learning, I think.
Well, I want to talk about that specific point, because what point in a workshop or a training does learning actually happen? What's the moment of transformation versus, yeah, just information transfer? When does that happen according to you?
Great question. I once learned from a woman I'm very inspired by, actually, that the learning is in the reflection. When I explain something, it's not there and then that people will learn out of it. The learning doesn't happen within my explanation or within the content I'm giving them. The learning happens within their brain. So these questions I'm gonna ask, and these exercises and workshop elements I'm gonna introduce are there to provoke reflection. And it's once people within their own mind and within the interaction they're having with themselves, colleagues, me, it's there that the learning will happen. Of course, putting to practice in itself is a very important learning intervention, but the real change happens here. It's creating this space, this oxygen, that allows people to reflect on things, to ask themselves these questions, to answer the questions I'm asking them or they're asking each other. It's there and then that the learning really happens.
Yeah.
Not within the content, within the theory. That's all very interesting, but it's not there that we learn. We can
Yeah.
learn off of it, but not we don't learn there and there or something. I don't know if I'm clear here, but
For me, you're very clear. So what happens is that you are only learning as an active process. It's not a passive thing. It's not
yeah,
something that you look. You know that I am going very hard on not watching videos to learn something. If you want to learn something, I mean, a lot of organizations out there, they think like we record it once, we record the information, what the expert has to say, we broadcast it to everybody, and then
yeah,
everybody has that information, and it's up to them to make it happen, right? And
yeah,
and I think we are very aligned on that one. It is not a passive thing. If you want people to learn something, it is more of an active thing. It's an active process, and as you said, it's in reflection. So there is some level of discomfort in that one as well. It is something that requires attention, and yeah, you need to work to that. If you're delivering it in a classroom training or an online training, doesn't matter. You need to work to that so that the mind is open and ready to be in a discomfortable position, basically. Right. So, yeah.
yeah. Training is about managing resistance and objections. If there is no resistance, if there are no objections, then probably people are not learning a lot. And a lot of organizations and trainers try to evade resistance and objections, and they are exactly what you need to provoke them and manage them actively so that people change the way they think. You know that I think the mistake we often make when we look at training as a purely rational process of I explain you something and you will, after that you will do it the way I've explained you, and that totally ignores the way the human being works.
Yeah.
That totally ignores everything we know about psychology and neurology.
Mm.
So that's where good training interventions work differently. We need to be aware of the fact that a human being is not a rational being.
Yeah.
It's an emotional being, and it's very rare that a human being is just 100% open to digest any information and 100% puts it to practice after that. It doesn't happen like that. Learning doesn't work like that. We don't think like that. So good training interventions accept that as a fact and use that reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are ways to open up that mind, right? It's,
Oh
I
yeah.
like to use humor as a way to open the
Mhm.
brain. I like to play as well, as you've seen as well, and had a lot of fun with as well.
Yeah.
But I think what you also do, and you do it really well, is to make room for emotions, to show vulnerability, to show that nothing what you're saying is a dogma, or it is you have to accept this and there is no room for interpretation, right? I think that that is one of the powers that you have. Yeah, but
Well,
yeah, that's an
yeah.
observation that I have.
Thank you again. Of course, you're very spot on. I think with your observation, it's aligned with what I believe.
Mm,
It's about, again, as I said before, the connection.
mm,
It's about building trust. If there is no trust, it's going to be very hard to get a message across, especially, and that's often what our ambition is, if we try to have an impact on a person's current behavior, current beliefs, current way of doing things. You know, when you work in customer service, when you want people to change the way they interact with customers, when you want their leaders to profoundly change the way they lead their teams within the customer service department, this goes quite far, quite deep. It's not about a small cosmetic change here and there. It's about something that profoundly should change the way you look at what you're doing. Very often it's really that. It's about challenging current beliefs, and that only can happen when there is trust. Only then will people be able to show vulnerability, to admit certain things, to be open towards ideas that might have sounded very strange and unbelievable to them in the first place. So yeah, it comes back to the thing we started with. If you do not manage this element within your training process, you will never be able to get the result you're looking after. You may have the best content in the world and only speak scientifically proven truths. It will not get any impact at all if you do not manage this wavelength actively.
Yeah. How do you, just to for the people who haven't seen you or me in action, how do you create for emotional engagement, for that trust to happen? How do you create that space in a professional learning environment? What are the things that you do or say that make that happen, that make that possible?
It's less about what I say and more about the room I leave for other people to say something, and then the way I will take their messages into consideration. Make room, invest a lot of time actually in allowing participants to express themselves. Only then will you allow yourself as a trainer to get a better understanding of their reality, their beliefs, and only then will you be able to create opportunities to challenge and change sometimes, or confirm the things they're throwing in. So I know again, I feel I'm talking in big cliches, but it is about listening, but truly listening. No cosmetics. You cannot fake listening. Well, you can fake it, but it won't work. And make sure within your training interventions you get these moments, these touch points where you really allow that to happen. If you fill your 2 hours of training time with 2 hours of content, you might as well not invest in training at all. It won't make any difference.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah, let's get to the heart of what makes learning stick, right? The question I have burning on my lips is, how do you structure a workshop so that people actually apply what they learned the next day? Not just nod and go along and then forget when they hit the work floor. How do you structure a workshop so that people can actually apply what they learned the next day and not just forget everything?
You know, most L&D professionals will know this. There's 4 phases within any learning process, right? First phase of learning is it's actually the default state before learning. You're unconsciously incompetent. You know, you're not aware that there is something you don't know that you should know in order to improve something. That's a great state to be in. You're unaware. You're unaware. You think you're the best in the world. And you're fully unconscious of the fact that there is something you're missing. The next phase is becoming consciously incompetent. You know, something happens and all of a sudden you think, whoa, oh my God, I didn't know this. Or you see someone do something and you're like, wow, I'm not able to do that. I want to do that. I want to be able to do that. And only then, that's where you become open to learning. Oh, that's a very important phase within a training. There should be this moment where you allow your participants to become consciously incompetent. There's a lot of things you can do. There are a lot of interventions. You can just enable what I call a flop case, you know, give them an exercise where you're fully aware that they will not be able to do it successfully in the first attempt. So you make people aware of, oh, wow, there is something I cannot do. I wanted to achieve this and I wasn't able to do it. That might sound harsh, but if you do it within a context of trust and safety, it's absolutely a very effective and successful way of creating that moment. Sometimes it can just be a question. You know how you sometimes talk to a customer and you told him exactly what he needs to do to solve his problem, but he doesn't want to listen. That's one simple question. Just ask it to your participants, and it can be enough to make them consciously incompetent. They're like, oh, yeah, I have that. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's frustrating. And then you get them in learning mode. So
Mm.
from conscious incompetence, you can get people to conscious competence. And once people are aware there is something they can learn in order to improve something within their lives, their jobs, whatever, that's where you can, well, give them a checklist, some theory, something that will help them. Um, you can explain something, you can show something, and they can learn out of it. Being consciously competent means I'm trying to do this very consciously, and every time I do this, I have a sense that I become more competent. You know, when you're learning how to drive a car, that's often the best example. Those first few hundreds of kilometers or miles, um, you're very aware of what you're doing. It uses a lot of energy. You know, you're exhausted after a 5-minute car drive the first few times. That's this phase. It's very similar within any given learning situation. You're very exhausted these first few attempts. That's being consciously competent. I can do it, but I need to think about it. I'm very aware of it. It uses up a lot of energy. And
Mm.
then the final phase, becoming unconsciously competent.
Yeah.
If I'm driving my car right now, I don't need to think actively about anything I'm doing. It just goes all in itself. My brain has processed this in a way that I can just drive a car without actively thinking about it. Great, great. I can think about other problems and frustrations and stuff when I'm driving the car. Anyway,
Yeah.
unconsciously competent. So of course, and again, I think most L&D professionals will know this. You need to understand these four phases, and then you can develop a training program or a workshop or, well, any intervention. It could be an e-learning intervention as well, of course, that makes sure it integrates this reality within. Um,
Yeah.
if you do that, you get better training programs that get better lasting results.
Yeah. That is, yeah. I also had it explained to me with the car example. That, I mean, that really spoke to me. What you're saying is that you actually have to think upfront about how am I going to guide people um, through all this, right? So it's about making sure that people are receptive to any information you're going to give them, right? So that safe environment, and then guide them through those four phases until they actually reach the stage where they go like, oh, but this is actually not that difficult after all, because I can do it, and now I want to put it into practice in my daily life.
Yeah, and that fourth phase that hardly ever happens within a training session, of course, and that's where on the job support becomes extremely important. You know, um, at the end of a training, at best, you have some conscious competence among your participants, and they can start experimenting with what they've learned within their job. And, well, only, and that's where a lot of support is actually needed most of the time, especially within a customer service setting where there's lots of things going on, lots of pressure. So it's very easy to just put aside what you've learned within the training, even when it was a very good training session, and get back to your usual habits and your usual way of working, because most often the organization around you will push you towards doing that. So only if you also design the learning experience after the training and make sure that you help people put to practice what they've learned and keep on experimenting with it until it becomes a habit,
Yeah.
until they're unconsciously competent, only then will you truly succeed. So that in itself is a very important part of the learning design. And that's why whenever I develop a program for an organization, I actively invest in this part of the process as well.
Mm.
Otherwise, most often you might as well not. organize the training as well, and the result will be more or less the same. People will have had a nice workshop, fun time, nice connecting with the trainer and the other participants, but then the impact on business and on true change will be very
Yeah.
limited.
A bad workshop is not where the walls crumble down, but it's actually the one that is pure entertainment and no change at all.
Yeah, and I mean, it can be fun for the sake of it. It can be relief. It can be a nice bonding experience for teams. All of these things can be valuable in themselves. But if you strive towards profound and lasting value for employees, value for customers, value for the organization, then you need to look at training from a different angle.
Yeah.
Sustainability is very important.
Yeah. Dimitri, how do you see workshop and learning design evolve over the future? I mean, what should we be thinking about when
Mm.
we design a learning experience for the future, right?
Mm.
I mean, if you look back, I'll tell you where I'm coming from. When you look back, there are things in the past that have changed you in a profound way in how you look at how the people learn, right? And this will continue this will continuously happen. So there is an evolution in learning design. Everybody thought that AI was going to revolutionize everything. That hasn't happened, but there are things that are going to change the future of
Yes.
learning for sure.
Well, talking about AI, where I use AI more and more is in, it's beginning, I'm beginning to get better at it. It took me a long time to learn where I can use GPT like tools for me to gain efficiency, productivity. I have learned that AI can be a great sparring partner in designing training. It can be a great sparring partner in ordering your thoughts, in structurizing what it is you want to do, in creating matrices, links between different angles, objectives. So I only recently actually started to sense that it saves me a lot of time and energy now as a sparring partner. And that's where I, as a training facilitator, change and CX professional, use AI a lot. The more energy I save using AI for these parts of what I do, the more energy I am left with to focus on that truly human connection. The more I can invest in being there with the people I work with, the participants, the trainers I train, the leaders I train, the managers I have as customers, and
Mm.
looking for the word here. Well, the management. Um, th- and that's where, so the more I can have AI help me with that part, the more I can crystallize what it is that truly makes me stand out as a professional, and use my ability to connect with people and to take them with me within the process. I
Yeah.
don't know if it is a true answer to your question, but
Yeah, absolutely. Because I
I,
was
I think that is where we are heading more and more.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one because the evolution of the facilitator is that it's not something that we see everywhere in the world right now, where people are starting to apply AI. The human aspect becomes even more important. So it is about freeing mental capacity to
Mm.
actually do the things that we are good at and do them really well. I mean, that is where we are making the difference here. It is not in the mundane things. It's not in the things that can be automated or should be automated. I'll leave that in the middle. Yeah, the moments that there is a human interaction, then it has to shine. Then it's actually because it is by intent. It's by design that that human was
Exactly.
there and that it needs to have added value.
Exactly. And yes, probably within this learning phase of artificial intelligence, a lot of mistakes are gonna be made, and a lot of cost cutting or believed cost cutting will happen using AI for things where it will not make the thing happen that you want it to make it happen. Um, we need to better understand where AI can really save us energy and effort and work, like all of the other big revolutions in the past have taught us, and then make sure we understand where we as human beings will continue to make the difference. To me, right now, that is in truly connecting with the people I work with, truly making an effort to understand their reality, their beliefs, their needs, then truly making an effort on being or on taking up the role that I can take up to help them make a next step within their development, within, of course, a company's strategy, a vision, mission, values. That is where I think, where I'm quite good at. And AI will only help me to become better at that. That's where I'm more and more relieved, actually, and more confident. That's
Yeah.
the word I was looking for. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Dimitri, we're coming to the end of our time together, unfortunately, but I want to make sure that our listeners walk away with something that they can immediately apply when they are designing better learning experiences. For someone, for a CX leader who's been asked to design or facilitate a workshop, what's the very first thing they should think about?
Wow. Yeah. It comes back to the things we said.
Yeah.
Is there trust? Is there trust? If there is no trust, create trust. All of the other things can only happen after that. So ask yourself this question consciously at the beginning of the development phase, but also at the beginning of any learning intervention. Is there trust? If not, work on trust. Then do the rest. And that's a basic principle that goes a lot further than training. I think that's what happens within any customer service conversation in itself. If there's no trust between a customer and an organization, success is out of the question. And it's the same within leadership. I mean, it always starts with trust. Invest in creating trust. Make sure you deserve trust. Work on trust.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that an
Yeah.
answer to your question?
That's absolutely an answer. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, that is what's yes. Everything starts with that one, right? If there is none, and again, the way you create that trust is different, and that is based on the personality of the facilitator. You and I,
Sure.
we do that in different ways because of our personality.
Mhm.
But yeah, there needs to be a solid ground that you can work on, because otherwise, yeah, you're doing a very nice show, but nothing actually
Yeah.
will happen.
And if I may add one thing, if you
Sure.
want to build trust, what I do, stop. Create room to breathe. Actively become aware of the things around you. Actively observe, listen to the people you're working with. Get out of that rush. Within an operational environment, especially, people are always rushed. They don't make time to think about things, to actively reflect on things, to actively listen to people and trying to understand what it is that makes them behave the way they do. So stop staying in that operational rush, get out of that, pause, and be aware. That's where trust can start developing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That may be one more tangible action one could put to practice there.
Well, thank you so much, Dimitri. Thank you really for your time, for your expertise. I learned new things again. I mean, that's the thing with you. I keep on learning. We know each other for how many years now? I don't know, but every single time you teach me something, and I am very grateful for that one.
That's absolutely likewise, Michel. Thank you for inviting me.
You're going to make me blush. Well, to everyone listening, the message from Dimitri today is that we've been approaching workshops and training all wrong. I think we've been optimizing for content coverage, where we should be optimizing for change, for genuine interaction, for genuine interest. And as Dimitri has shown us today, effective learning design isn't about having better content or more engaging delivery. It's about understanding the conditions that allow people to actually change. Thank you, Dimitri, for sharing your insights on this critical but often overlooked aspect of professional development. And thank you to the listeners who have been faithfully listening and watching us on their favorite content channel. If this conversation sparked something in you, we'd love to hear about it. Until next time, remember, the goal isn't to teach people what you know, it's to help them become what they need to be. Thank you.
Thank you.